What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Hangover. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me, as always, is my co-host Shannon White. Shannon, how was your weekend, man? Happy belated 4th of July, too.
No, same to you. We had a wonderful weekend and celebrating America and our freedom, and so we always enjoy the Fourth. You know, we do s'mores and have barbecues and cookouts and family time, making memories. So it was great.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I did the same, man. Did the same here. We had a little cookout. Played a little bit with the fireworks, nothing too crazy.
Yeah,
And then I
we
got a
still
lot of
got them
dogs.
all. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Um, I got a few dogs, so it was more about trying to keep them calm than anything else.
yep, yep.
But moving on to the Steelers football, we got some breaking news earlier today. Cam Sutton suspended for 8 games, waived his right for an appeal, so he's going to serve all 8 games. What was your first reaction to the suspension? And secondly, what was your reaction to the amount of games that he's suspended for?
Yeah, it first broke on our Slack channel, and everybody started talking about it, and I was like, 8 games. I said, usually the domestic violence, a lot of times it's 6 games, and they'll appeal and get it down to 4. But this one, obviously, I said by the length of the suspension, we'll know how serious this was. And I mean, I know he played out, so he didn't have to face any jail time and all that, but it must have been pretty severe. Maybe kind of like what the initial reports we heard, because everybody downplayed it when the Steelers signed him so quick. But I mean, they got him for the veteran minimum. He's very experienced with the Steelers, the organization, with the defense they're running. He's actually almost like another coach out there. Mm-hmm. And I think they thought they could bring him in. He would be able to participate in training camp and preseason and be a benefit to the young corners, especially a guy like Beanie Bishop. And then they would try to tread water while he was suspended. I'm kind of shocked that they signed him as quickly as they did if they thought it might be an 8-game suspension, even for the veteran minimum, because it's kind of a bad look for the franchise that we're going to bring in somebody that has been charged with domestic abuse. But I'm just going to have to, we that's all we can do is have faith that the Steelers did their due diligence and they believe it's something that was totally out of character, something that'll never happen again. And they feel comfortable having him in the organization.
Yeah, I was not surprised of the suspension. I was a little bit surprised about the 8 games. Yeah. More surprised that he waived his right for appeal. And that got me to thinking that he probably, maybe perhaps they were contemplating a longer suspension, maybe the entire year.
Yep.
More than likely. And they basically told him, hey, we'll skip all the drama and stuff, and we'll stick it at 8 games, but you can't appeal it. And I think that was probably something that probably ended up happening. But the 8 games, it's longer, like you said, especially for a first-time offender, and not appealing it or anything like that. Usually it's 6 games, much less the 8. So it does, make you think maybe perhaps there was some validity to the reports that were out there, as you mentioned. But when it comes to the football side of things, he's going to miss the first 8 games. However, that's none of the division games. He'll be available for all the division games. The 8th game or the 9th week is a bye week. So I'm not sure if they're going to let him come back and practice ahead of schedule or before he can play. Sometimes, when you're suspended, you can't practice, you can't go to the facility or anything like that. I'm not sure if that's the case in this situation. But if it is, having that bye week will get him somewhat up to speed. He is familiar with the team, so it shouldn't be so much of a huge jump for him. And the teams that he's going to be going up against are familiar foes. It's going to be the division, so he should be familiar with the game plan to go up and up against those teams. So I fully expect him to probably start unless one of these guys are playing out of this world. If Beanie Bishop goes in there and is just blowing it up, then maybe perhaps we see a little bit less of Cam Sutton unless there's an injury. But I'm just like you're right, man. It gives the organization a little bit of a black eye.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, the news is now, once training camp starts and things of that nature, it probably won't be such a big deal. But when he makes his return, those questions are going to be coming up. I just hope it doesn't become a distraction in the locker room. What do you think? You think, this is going to be the end, that we're going to not hear about this anymore? Or you think this is going to be a continual thing that's going to be coming up?
Yeah, I think that we'll hear about it for a while. I think, like somebody was just asking, will he be able to practice and work out with the team during his suspension? No. During the season, he will not be at the facilities. It's he's not going to be paid those 8 weeks, obviously. Now, as far as I know, training camp and preseason, he's available, but then he's gone, for those 8 weeks. So I don't know. I mean, here's the thing, Daniel. You brought in Ryan Watts, who I believe, even though he's a later round pick, he has a lot of potential to be able to help in multiple ways. You have Beanie Bishop, who I think is a feisty, tough, fast little slot guy. You have two different guys, because that's what Sutton was really going to do, is play some slot and play some deep safety like he did his last year, a couple years in Pittsburgh. And I'm wondering if in a perfect world, Watts and Beanie Bishop is really performing, and maybe Darius Rush and Trice, and they have some depth there. Deshaun Elliott can play in the slot as well. There's a lot of movable parts and interchangeable parts, and I'm wondering if the reason I think he'll make the team is because of that he's on the veteran minimum. But if he doesn't hit the ground running, he's not going to see the field when the regular season starts and his suspension's over.
Yeah, and I think, that would be a good problem to have, right? Mm-hmm. Him not being able to see the field. Like they said, I think somebody mentioned it in the live chat. 8 weeks is a long time. By the time this happens, a lot of people probably would have forgotten about it or not mentioned it until it happens, until he returns. And then it's probably only going to be a center point for a little bit. Fortunately for the Steelers, they're going to be on a bye week that week. He returns. So take that for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, we're going to talk the rest of the show about the topic of today, which is going to be a better or worse, up or down sort of thing. We're going to go through a couple of player stats, and we're going to ask the question: do you think they're going to be better this year than they were last year, or do you think last year they had a little bit better of a year? And we'll start off with the quarterback position. Last season, a combination throughout the entire 17 games, the Steelers quarterbacks threw for 3,471 yards, 13 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, and 0 rushing touchdowns. So let's start off with the yards, 3,421 yards. Do you think that this current Steelers quarterback, whether it's Russell Wilson or Justin Fields or the combination of the two, are going to be throwing over 3,400 yards?
They better.
I hope so too.
And to answer, definitely. I just think that there's just been so many upgrades from the coaching standpoint to the talent on the field that, yes, they should obliterate that mark.
I agree. What about the 13 passing touchdowns? I'm sure that's going to be better too.
Yeah, again, I think that, they had some guys last year that didn't necessarily get the opportunity to do much with the play after they caught the pass because of some of the routes that were being run, a lot of stop routes and comeback routes, stuff of that nature. We've seen that open up late in the year, and we've seen more big plays and better performances when the quarterback performance went up and improved. So, yeah, I expect that to, again, be much improved.
The last easy one, 0 rushing touchdowns. You think this year the quarterback position is going to get a few more?
Yeah, because Wilson and Fields are very athletic, and they'll take what's there. But if that opportunity arises, Yeah, they're going to leave the pocket and score that touchdown. So, and I think there's going to be some designed quarterback runs this year, especially if they work Fields in some specialty plays. So, yeah, I expect at least 4 or 5 minimum.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. Now this is where it gets a little bit tough. The quarterbacks were responsible for, I believe, 10 turnovers. Do you think that the Steelers' current quarterbacks will have more or less turnovers than 10? That's including fumbles.
Yeah. I think it'll be a little up because I think it's going to be a little more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
You're having guys who are not holding the ball because they can't find a receiver or they lack vision or the ability to go through progressions, but you're going to have guys who are looking for big plays. And we know Wilson loves to do that, and so does Fields. And by holding the ball longer, there is a chance to throw late and have interceptions or have the ball knocked loose. So I would expect a little bit with added scoring. I think there's also going to be a few extra turnovers.
I agree. I agree with everything that you said here. I think there's going to be some more rushing touchdowns because I think there's going to be an emphasis on the quarterback mobility aspect of the of these guys' abilities. I mean, you want to play to their strengths, and one of their strengths is running with the ball, especially Fields. So I think that's going to go up. I think the touchdowns are going to go up through the air. I definitely think the yards are going to go up as well. The turnovers is where, like I said, I think that's also going to go up. The Steelers last season, the quarterback position was very, very conservative. Didn't take very many chances, especially deep down the field. And so I see that that's probably going to be significantly different this year. I think that the Steelers are going to take some, smart decisions and not just going to throw it up every single time. But I think it's definitely going to be thrown further and more accurate. I expect this to go up as well. Moving on into the running back position. All right, go ahead. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
I'm sorry. I think there's a confidence factor that we have to take into account. As Rudolph started to show what he could do, we seen the offense and Tomlin give him more leeway to drive the ball down the field and be more aggressive because he could do it. And I think that Tomlin will have that kind of faith, especially in Russell Wilson early. And if he performs like he's capable, especially throwing the ball down the field deep, then I think that they will call more of those plays and also utilize the middle of the field more. So that's where you'll see added big plays, more scoring, but occasional turnovers because the more tip passes, stuff of that nature.
No, I agree. As far as the running back position, Najee ran for 1,035 yards last season with 8 touchdowns. Jaylen Warren had 789 yards with 4 touchdowns. Out of those two, which one do you see going up in the right direction, and any of those two do you see going down?
No, I think they both should go up.
Okay.
The reason why is I expect, which I know we're going to get to that, but the offensive line to be, substantially improved, and the play calling. Modern NFL, it's all about mismatches, and Smith knows how to create mismatches through personnel packages, formations, snap count, just the timing. Do a little hurry up here and there, throw it in the middle of a drive. Surprise the defense, make them at least use the timeout. That stuff I've seen him do at Atlanta, and he definitely did it at Tennessee. So I think that that's going to help. And the fact that he likes to throw to the running backs. And we know Russell Wilson likes to check down to the running backs too. And we remember when Ben was in there, he threw the ball to Harris a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I expect both guys to catch more passes this year and have an improved yards per carry with the improved offensive line.
I agree with you. I think that both of them will go up. I think Naj is probably going to stay somewhere similar to where he's at. I don't know if he's going to increase too much because I think that there's probably going to be, even though it was pretty balanced last season, something about the same amount of balance this year as far as the percentage of the amount of carries that each one is going to get. I can see them both getting around 50, 51% of the carries. And I can see both of them with like 51, 52, because I do think that they're both going to be on the field at the same time. In some plays and instances, I see Jalen probably going up the most, coming up from 789 yards. And this is just on the rushing side. I do see him and getting maybe perhaps a bigger workload. I also see this team offensively being on the field more, given the offensive line and their ability to do, having these weapons in the right place that they've managed to put them in. I anticipate there'll be a lot less 3-and-outs that we saw early and for the majority of last season. So I do expect this to go up on both players, but I think Jalen's probably going to have the bigger jump than the two.
And the type of 3-and-outs. So many times it was like the defense just got to the sidelines trying to take a drink of Gatorade and say, what just happened? And then it's run to the right or up the middle, another run, and now it's 3rd and long. And it's an incompletion. And they're like, okay, you're back out there. We definitely need to see a lot less of that.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%, man. That was brutal for the defense last year. Man. I mean, we talked about the middle linebacker position being snake bitten last season, but so was the safety position. They lost a lot of players, especially down the end of the season. And I think it's because they were utilizing some of them as middle linebackers in places they probably shouldn't have been. But this defense as a whole, I mean, you had the only person that stayed healthy the entire season that I thought was awesome. I mean, all of them staying healthy would have been awesome, but like TJ Watt, I don't think anybody would have expected him to be a 17-game starter, and he was. The year before, he had some injury issues, so it was a little bit of a concern. On the defensive line, Cam Hayward went out for a significant amount of time. Both inside linebackers, 3 inside linebackers were out for time. Safeties out for time. So, I mean, that the defense was snake bitten across the board. And so I think that the offense's struggle had a lot to do with that.
Oh, definitely.
And I think that that's going to change this year.
And then TJ misses the playoff game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they just couldn't catch a break.
No, they couldn't. They couldn't. You're right. The last player on offense that we're going to talk about is George Pickens. He had 5 touchdowns and 1,140 yards. I personally think both are going to go up, but what do you think?
Yeah, I'm really hoping. This is the year. There's the seasons that we call them contract years. This is his contract year because he has nothing blocking him from becoming a wide receiver 1. It's just effort and maturity. And I think that he's prepared for this. I think he'll have the quarterback play to support what he can do on the field. And I think he has an offensive coordinator that likes to lean on his wide receiver 1. So you put all that together, I think he's in for a big year.
I do too. I think he's going to get primary targets. I think that he's going to be, as you mentioned, he's got a quarterback that can get them the ball. Last season when Mason Rudolph got into the game, it was a different George Pickens. And it was across the board, whether he was, the receiving target or not. And that confidence that he had last year, I hope is transitioning into this year with the confidence in the quarterbacks that they have currently. Najee Harris recently spoke in a little brief interview that he had. And he said, they're expecting some big things. And he said that we got 2 quarterbacks, and I think he's absolutely right. Just those 2 players there, we should expect this team to be significantly better on the offensive side. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to transition to the defensive side. So don't go anywhere on the YouTube side. It'll be a couple seconds. On the audio side, we'll be back after a few words from our sponsors. And we're back, guys. Thank you for sticking with us. Hope everybody's still here. But that being said, I'm Daniel and Shannon. Don't forget, guys, about SteelCurtainNetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Go over there, check out all the breaking news coverage. You'll find the breaking news stuff on Cam Sutton, and you'll find anything else that comes out. So make sure you go check it out. And while you're there, you can listen to the audio-only podcast. You can catch mine that aired out this past Friday. It was the State of the Steelers podcast. Go look for it. You can find it on Apple or anywhere else you can find your podcast, but make sure you go and check out steelcurtainnetwork.com. All right, so transitioning to the defensive side, I think this one's going to be probably a little bit more difficult to predict than the offensive side. I think everything was kind of looking in the right direction on the offense side, given how poorly they started. It's not so much the case on the defensive side. We'll start off with TJ Watt. 17 games is what he played last season. You think he stays there or he drops them?
I don't want to compare him to JJ because, he's his own man and their family, yes, but that doesn't mean he's going to suffer frequent injuries later in his career like JJ did. They both play like their hair's on fire. And, they know one speed, and that's 110. So that concerns me. I like the depth better behind him now. I think they're better prepared if something does happen and he misses a little bit of time. I think that they have some options that could fill in better than when he missed so much of the 1 year. But it's hard to predict the guy's going to play every game because there's just so many little things. And we know that teams struggle to block him, so they chop block. They go low, and he gets dinged up that way a lot because he's reckless abandon on the field. He just goes for it, and knowing that they might chop block him or go for his knees. So, but I expect Watt to have another great all around season. Now, will he lead the NFL in sacks again? I'm not sure. The reason why is because I believe that we're going to see a return to a little bit of the Blitzburg style. And because they got so much athleticism now at inside linebacker as well, and they have very effective blitzers from that inside linebacker position. So I think we'll see fewer sacks from the defensive line, let's say. But I think we'll see more sacks from the linebackers, even from the slot, and even some safety blitzes. Because, they've got the talent and the physicality now to do that. So, he can still have a great year and say have 14, 15 sacks.
Yeah, that's still a pretty good year for most players.
Yeah.
I don't even know if Myles Garrett got to 15 sacks last year and he got Defensive Player of the Year. So
yeah, but he got close so many times.
He did.
He scared the quarterbacks a lot. They were scared. And we know that scaring the quarterback's more important than actually sacking him.
Yeah, exactly. For me though, the 17 game stuff, I'm not saying he's gonna miss a game due to injury or things of that nature, but here in the last year or so, when he's played, especially when injured down the late of the seasons because of necessity, there's nobody else behind him. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think that, Herbig coming along and you never know, maybe Golden finds his way back on the team. I feel that if something were to happen, the likelihood of them saying, hey, to sit out a game, given the depth that they have, is a little bit probably more likely than in years past. And also, I mean, if this offense does what they're supposed to do and this defense is where they're supposed to be, they may not have to play the last game. They might be the backups anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and go with less. As far as the sacks go, that was my next question. You answered it, saying, you're not sure if he's going to get to the, all around being the top guy. I agree with you. I think that he's probably going to hit somewhere around the 15, 16 range. I think he has the capability of getting to 19, 20, obviously. However, this defense got some players, and I think some other guys are going to get to the quarterback sometimes. And it's not just going to be TJ anymore. Keanu Benton up the middle, Alex Highsmith. He only had, 7 sacks last season. I expect him to have more than that this season.
Yeah.
Queen up the middle, or even Peyton Wilson. I expect, like you mentioned, all these different types of Blitzburg type of packages. I do expect it to be coming from all different areas. And thus I do expect this team to probably be leading the NFL in sacks, or at least top 5. But transitioning to Highsmith, do you think he has a better year than 7?
Oh, I definitely do. Highsmith last year, he dropped into coverage a good bit. We remember a couple of interceptions, big plays he had. Excellent coverage. He is a good coverage guy. He sets a mean edge, and he forced a couple of big fumbles. One, TJ returned for the touchdown to beat Cleveland. So even though he didn't have as consistent of success getting sacks as he did the year previous, he still applied consistent pressure and is just an excellent all-around player. At minicamp, he looked really fit. He looked really motivated, like he's put in that work again. We know he's a hard worker. And I think that just the threat of having Queen out there and Wilson and maybe Holcomb coming back and Landon Roberts, having the improved speed in the secondary is going to make quarterbacks hold the ball a little longer. And it's going to let these guys get home. And I don't think people really realize Highsmith lined up right next to Cam Hayward.
Mm-hmm.
And with Cam Hayward missing so much time, it was easier to double Highsmith. Chip him with a running back going out of the backfield. I wrote an article last year. I bet that Highsmith had nightmares about getting chipped by that running back as he went out in the pattern because they chipped him consistently because they didn't have to worry about Hayward being there.
Yeah.
And if Hayward can even give them just his mere presence and his strength to collapse the pocket, then that will help Highsmith.
I don't disagree with you there. I think you're absolutely right. I think, Highsmith, probably his lack of success there may have been attributed because of Cam Hayward's, not being there. I mean, that makes perfect sense there. I know a lot of people, were kind of saying, it was the TJ effect. Everybody's paying attention to TJ on the other side, but you're absolutely right. I mean, I think it's more important, if you're going to double team somebody on the left side or on your left side is going to be Alex Highsmith, especially if Cam Hayward's gone. And if he is in there, that's obvious who you're going to be double teaming. Yeah. And that's going to give Alex Highsmith those one-on-one situations. So yeah, I do think he's actually going to hit maybe 10 or 11, to be honest with you. I think he's going to have maybe not the year he had the year before at 14, but a much better improved year this year. And I think that, when it comes to pressure, it's the best friend is with coverage, right? Coverage and pressure make the best friends. Not so much about if you think it's going to be more or not, but how much more do you think, or how many more interceptions do you think that Minkah Fitzpatrick has this year? How many more big plays? He had 0 INTs last season. It was very uncharacteristic of him. He did deal with some injuries, and he was also out of position sometimes. But what do you think?
When I read after the season, I guess I was seeing him make tackles and sacrifice his body playing like a linebacker, but I didn't realize he had 0 splash plays, no interceptions, no forced fumbles, no fumble recoveries. It was like this wasn't Minkah Fitzpatrick. The guy, he's a ball magnet. I mean, when he's out there, the ball finds him, he puts himself in the right position to make big plays. And he just wasn't allowed to do that last year. So with having Deshaun Elliott and the improved team speed and size and everything with this young secondary, I expect Fitzpatrick could easily get 4 or 5 interceptions in splash plays this year and get back to what he does best. And he's the best in the NFL, in my opinion, as a ball hawking free safety.
I think you're right. I think Sean Elliott it's going to be huge for me. I think he can be the Ryan Clark to Troy Polamalu in this situation. Yeah. He's a hard-hitting safety. He can get in the box. I think the Steelers are going to want to also implement their 3 safety set. I mean, that's been something they've been wanting to do, but either somebody's been injured or suspended, and it just hasn't. They just haven't had the ability to put it out there. And I think this year might be the year where we finally might be able to see something like that, where it's Minkah, KZ, and Elliott out there at the same time. I can especially see that in games against maybe perhaps like the Ravens or the Browns, where you can anticipate some bigger looks, maybe more tight ends and running backs and rushing. So that's where I'm at on that. But I do think that Minkah's going to have much better year. I anticipate it being, a really good one. Number 97, we talked about him. He only had 2 sacks last year. He was dealing with a groin injury from majority of the year. I think having 2 sacks is A little bit of a surprise given how badly injured he was playing.
Mhm.
I think that's going to go up as well. He played, I believe it was 10 games. I think he's going to have a healthier season this year. Uh, what kind of stats can we expect from Cam this year? Do you see him getting back to being who he was prior to all these injuries last season?
And it pains me to say this because, I'm a huge Cam Hayward fan, but I don't see him ever getting back to where he was, meaning a dominating double digit sack guy.
Mhm.
Cameron's Hayward's game has always been based on power. He's one of the best power guys in the league. If you remember back, uh, Quentin Nelson for the Colts was widely considered the best interior lineman in the NFL, and he was the best guard. And he went up against Hayward uh, in some incredible matchups. And in one game where the Steelers beat the Colts in Pittsburgh, Cam Hayward dominated him. And he embarrassed him. I felt sorry for the guy a couple of times. With his arm over moving, he just humped him over out of the way to get, and hit the quarterback and forced an interception on one play. Cam Hayward is incredibly strong. He's one of the strongest guys in the NFL, pound for pound. The problem is, as we get older, we don't heal, we lose flexibility. It's hard to get that back. And then that core injury, it was a groin and his core. He tore it on up in to his abdomen. And it
Mhm.
was a very severe injury. And so the fact that he played at all that later part of the year showed how tough he is and how much he wanted to contribute. And I admire that. And I'm hoping that he'll surprise me with his ability to return to form, but I'm not counting on it because I've never seen a guy have that injury that serious and ever return to form at that age. So that's my concern. Um, I've said before, I think they're going to let him play this year out and then let him decide if he does want to go somewhere else or if he wants his legacy to be at Pittsburgh. Maybe they'll look like they're a team on the verge of being a Super Bowl team and he'll want to come back at a reduced salary. I'd love to see him lengthen his career by doing like Tyson Alulu. If you remember, Tyson slid into nose tackle and he was nowhere near as strong and didn't have the anchor that Cam Hayward does. Cam Hayward doesn't like rushing from the nose position, and it hurts his pass rush stats. And that's why I think he doesn't like playing nose. He says he don't. But I
Mhm.
think if he accepts it and he uses that immense strength and anchor he has, he could be the answer next year for the Steelers at nose tackle and make him even more valuable next year.
Yeah, I think the Steelers kind of used him a little bit at the nose tackle position before in the past, and he's played
Mm-hmm.
well in that position, a lot better than the other players that the Steelers had, at the time. And it's not very often that the Steelers run a nose, anyways. It's one of the
Mm-hmm.
least ran plays on the defensive side, especially with how offenses are ran. For me, I think that I think he's gonna do better than 2 sacks. I think he's gonna have a better year, but is he gonna get to the double digits? I don't know. I don't think so. I've
No, I
had the
don't
same
either.
concerns as you. Given his age and the injury. If I had to make a prediction right now, I would say that defensive tackle is probably a target in next year's draft in the first 1 or 2 rounds.
Yep.
Given the fact that I think that Cam Hayward's probably not going to be a Steeler for too much longer. I mean, obviously he has more years behind him than ahead of him, and I think the same goes for like a guy like Larry Ogunjobi. Uh, Loudermilk really hasn't lived up to anything. Neither has Liao. So you're left with Montravius Adams and Keanu Benton. Once everybody else, the dust settles, and obviously, I think that's going to be a position of need and a position that they're going to have to acquire relatively soon. I think that this so far, I mean, knock on something, but it seems like it's Larry Ogunjobi's most healthiest year. So hopefully, we can see a little bit more of what he can bring as far as his full potential. I think it's been, I think it was Mike Tomlin said we haven't seen a healthy Larry Ogunjobi yet. Well, I'm excited to see what a healthy Larry Ogunjobi can do. But even if he does well, I think the Steelers owe him a bit of money next season. He might be a guy that's, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how good he does this year.
I don't know if anybody's ever seen a healthy Larry Ogunjobi because I mean he's always on the injury list. But I think we see the shift in philosophy with Kahn and Waddle. They've focused. I said earlier, I don't remember Kevin Colbert drafting 3 real impact starters on the offensive line in a decade. And last year, the draft alone, they drafted 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I expect that now they're really happy with what they have. And I think next year, as you say, we're going to see them focus on the other big boys on the defensive side. I really do. I think that's what we're going to witness, that they've took care of one foundation and next year they'll take care of another one. And also we got to mention Logan Lee. I don't know how much he's going to be able to contribute this year. You know, if he does make the team, he might be practice squad but he does come from a similar defense playing for Iowa that the Steelers run. So he feels very comfortable in the defense. So hopefully he will surprise us and can offer them at least some special teams play and some depth on that line, because, you know, he does remind me of a young Brett Keisel.
Yeah. He's a guy that I think is up and coming. If he ends up making the team, though, if he makes the 53, I think Loudermilk, Leal, one of those guys is probably not. Who's the first guy off if either, you know, Lee makes the team or Dean Lowry? Do you see somebody else being knocked off that was on the team last season?
Yeah, I think Lowry is going to make the team. I think Lowry was he's a professional. We remember they had Watts last year.
Yeah. And
Watts, I always said about him, he was a professional. You knew what to expect from him and he would do his job. And that's the same thing about Lowry. So in my opinion, Leal is in the wrong defense. Leal needs to go to a 4-3 somewhere and be used correctly. He's not going to be successful, I don't think, in Pittsburgh. He's not going to put, you know, he needs to be around 350, 320 pounds. I just don't see it. And Loudermilk, this is basically his last chance. So if he doesn't really shine in camp or the preseason, now that they have Lowry, I think those two would be the guys that are no longer with them.
Yeah, I do too. I think it would probably start off with Leo, and then, you know, next one would be probably Loudermilk. You know, but Loudermilk, he looked good hitting those dummies. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to transition into the game, but he looked mad out there.
You've seen the movie Bloodsport, haven't you?
Is that with
Claude Van Damme?
Yeah.
Remember what the guy said when he broke the bricks and he said, "Bricks don't hit back."
Oh.
and that's what I think about Loudermilk hitting them dummies.
Yeah,
because them dummies, they don't hit back, because when he's in the game, he don't look like it.
Yeah. I mean, he was going through them like quick, boom, boom, and I was like, man, he looks fast. He looks good, but I was like, those are dummies. So they're not hitting back. You're absolutely right. Yeah. In other news, I don't know if you saw this, but did you hear what Joe Burrow had to say about TJ Watt earlier?
I heard something I read that he said he had to treat him different than any other defender in the league because he's already got 2 interceptions off of him on that same type of where he's tried to throw it, and Watt right at the line of scrimmage goes straight up and catches it. But I didn't read it all. I just seen him, give Watt credit that he's special.
Yeah, he said that he's a unique player in the league. He said there's no other defensive lineman that I have to treat like a DB. I have to be conscious of where he's at because he's going to jump up and catch it. There's nobody else that can do that. I think he's right. I mean, when it comes to TJ Watt's ability to jump up and catch it, one time, okay, but twice, maybe more times than that. I think this is probably something he really strives on and maybe works on in practice. And, to get up there and not only bat it down, but to somehow corral it in.
But JJ did a couple of them too.
Yeah, he did.
They both, because I think JJ played volleyball in high school, and and they both have worked on their hand-eye coordination and maybe JJ was even a tight end too when he got to Wisconsin. But what I'm saying is they have good hands and they're such great athletes and they're catching the ball full speed from like 2 yards away. That's incredible.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's insane what some of these athletes can do. And when you also look at who they're playing up against and who they're able to do it to, I swear,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot there. Well, I mean, that's all the news and stuff that I got for you. Do you got any final words for everybody or anything else you want to add on to it?
No, I've seen a lot of different opinions today about the Cam Sutton situation, and I honestly can see both sides of the equation. I agree with everybody, and I trust the Steelers to do the right thing and make the right decision here. Let's say it's the middle of the season. They're getting ready to go into that terrible stretch of games late in the year. They could very easily need a guy like Sutton and his experience and his ability to play multiple positions, and they would be looking to try to sign him then. And we know that, necessity, needing help, needing these players will get them signed regardless. And the Steelers, he has more value right now to the Steelers than he does anybody else. So I'm anxious to see if we hear anything else or if this all kind of dies down a little bit, which I'm hoping it's the latter and it does die down. And he'll have some value and everything during training camp in the preseason.
Yeah, I do too. It's like I said earlier, it's like a black eye to the organization right now.
Mm-hmm.
He accepted responsibility. He's not going to challenge it or appeal it. That could go another way. A lot of us looked at that as maybe perhaps there was something worse on the table, but it could be also a situation where he's accepting responsibility for what had occurred and isn't challenging it. So, I mean, we don't know. I don't know exactly what's happening there. Only Cam Sutton and the Pittsburgh Steelers know the answers to those questions. And I'm sure if, he's the man that he was, or he's the man that he's shown recently, we'll find out sooner or later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, if he's who the Steelers think he is, then and we're not going to hear or see any other problems from him. X Concepts asks, can Sutton appeal it? He waived his right to appeal this, so he is going to serve the full 8 games. So he'll be back week 10 after the bye week, and it'll be the first game. I think that's Baltimore, ain't it? The first game against the division.
I can't remember. It's I think I read October 28th would be the first game back.
Then it's not Baltimore.
I think that's what I read. It was October 28th, or his first official day back. Maybe not game, but
gotcha. Yeah. I know it's week 10.
Yep.
So, with that being said, guys, I appreciate everybody tuning in. If you're watching this on the YouTube side, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, ring that notification bell. That way you're notified of all the times we go live and also our other videos that come out. We also throw out random videos here and there of some of the audio only podcasts. They'll show up on our YouTube site. So make sure you're subscribed and all that so you don't miss that. And you don't miss tomorrow night's show with Big Brosco. And then Wednesday, Shannon's back on Pump Your Brakes.
Yep.
So with that being said, we're out of here. Shannon, take us out, man.